Number one, the Honourable David Cunliffe.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, to the Prime Minister, does he stand by his statement that in the end we need to get the unemployment rate down? And if so, why is unemployment still at 6% 5 years after the recession?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, yes, we're actually 3 years out of recession and the unemployment rate has fallen from a peak of 7.2% to the current 6%. The labour market is definitely strengthening. The number of people with a job increased by 84,000 last year, which was the strongest employment growth in a decade. Currently, 69.3% of people aged 15 and over are in the labour force, which is the highest participation rate since the Household Labour Force Survey began in 1986. And as I said yesterday, budget forecasts will show the unemployment rate dropping to 4.5% by the end of 2017.
Mr Speaker.
Supplementary question, the Honourable David Cunliffe.
Given that answer and despite the only 8,000 jobs added the year before, why won't his government work harder and match Labour's commitment to reducing unemployment to 4% by 2017? Or is he and his government no longer ambitious for New Zealand?
Order.
Mr Speaker.
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
I can see an insight into the personality of the Leader of the Opposition, which is clearly he writes to Santa and still hopes for the Easter Bunny.
Order. Can I ask the Prime Minister to refer to Speaker's Ruling 1763, where starting an answer to that question with a political attack will lead to further disorder in the House? Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, yesterday the Leader of the Opposition came out with a wish that unemployment was lower. Not a policy, not a plan, a wish. So I say to the Leader of the Opposition, if he wants to join and support National with the reforms we have undertaken to employment laws, if he wants to support the government on oil and gas exploration, if he wanted to support the making of the Hobbit movies in New Zealand, if he wanted to support the speeding up of the RMA, if he wanted to support the capping of the public sector administration, if he wanted to support the special housing accords, all of those things, then I might take his wish seriously. Otherwise, he should stick to Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny.
Order.
Mr Speaker.
Supplementary question, Honourable David Cunliffe.
Mr Speaker, why does the wannabe All Black not put 4% unemployment on his wish list when Labour achieved 3.9% on an average over 5 years when last in office? And I ask him again, has he given up being ambitious for New Zealanders?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, it's one thing to have a pipe dream, it's another thing to have a plan. The government has a plan for New Zealand that's working. And I know the members get a little bit excited. They get a little bit excited, Mr Speaker, but a wish does not make a plan and never will.
Mr Speaker,
supplementary question, Honourable David.
Why won't that Prime Minister show us the plan when there are still 31,000 more people unemployed today than was forecast in his own 2011 budget, which was, of course, handed down after the GFC and the Christchurch earthquakes?
Well,
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, I'm more than happy to table the business growth agenda, which has how many points? 350 individual points, Mr Speaker. The second point I'd make is there are more people in employment in New Zealand today than ever in the history of this country. And thirdly, Mr Speaker, every time the government comes up with a proposal to help people in work, it's rejected. Yesterday, the Labour Party didn't come up with an alternative budget. They came up with a wish list of two things. They hope the surplus will be lower and they hope the unemployment rate will be lower. Well, there's a whole lot of people who hope David Cunliffe will no longer be leader of the Labour Party.
Order, Mr Speaker.
Order.
Point of order, Mr Speaker.
This is a point of order. It will be heard in silence.
Point of order. The Prime Minister has no responsibility for Labour Party policy. However, he may wish he had a plan like it.
Order. Order. The difficulty I have with that point of order is in an earlier supplementary, the member himself brought in the Labor Party's plan of action. Further supplementary.
Mr. Speaker.
Supplementary.
Mr. Speaker.
Order. Supplementary question, Honourable David Cunliffe.
Mr. Speaker, what use is his glossy business growth agenda when unemployment is still 50%, 50% above pre-recession levels, when other developed countries like Germany and Japan now have unemployment lower than it was 6 years ago when he and his unambitious government took office?
Right, Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, it may come as a great shock to the member, but there's been a recession which we actually inherited from Labor, a mess in terms of the spending we inherited from Labor, and the global financial crisis, not to mention Christchurch. So, again, if the member wants to just imagine things, he should keep going. But if he wants to be taken seriously on economic policy and have that debate during the campaign, he is going to have to trot along to Television One with a lot more than a wish list.
Speaker.
Supplement. Order.
Mr. Speaker.
Supplementary question.
Which of the
Honourable
following, Mr. Speaker, best describes the so-called mess he inherited from the last Labor government? Was it net debt equal zero? Was it the lowest unemployment in the Western world? Was it some of the lowest inequality since his previous government took office? Or, in fact, sir, is the $60 billion that he slapped on the country's credit card his responsibility and his responsibility alone?
Right, Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, well, if the member wants to look at responsibility for a lot of that debt, he should just pick up a mirror. Because in reality, Mr. Speaker, the government actually inherited a whole bunch of programs and expenditure that was either poorly targeted or unaffordable. Mr. Speaker, the member just needs to go and look at the record. For the last 5 years of that Labor government, they increased expenditure by $3 billion, between $2.7 and $3 billion a year, Mr. Speaker. The simple facts of life are more people are in employment in New Zealand than ever before, and the Labor opposition are opposed to every pro-growth initiative that is out there.
Order. Order. Question number 2, Right Honourable Winston Peters.